Hello everyone, today we will do chapter 8 Heredity of class 10 Science Biology. Heredity and Evolution. Heredity. Living organisms have certain recognizable heritable features such as height, complexion, color of hair and eyes, shape of nose and chin, etc. These are called characters. The alternative form of character are called traits. The inheritable characters or traits may be morphological, anatomical, psychological, or reproductive. The transmission, the transmission or passing of genetically based characters of traits from one parent to their offspring is called heredity. The occurrence of small differences or changes among the individual of a species is called variation. Heredity variation are of great importance in the process of evolution of a new species. Asexual reproduction results in small amount of variation as compared to sexual reproduction. Genes are the specific part of chromosomes or deoxyribonucleic acid or DNA segment which determine the heredity characters. Every gene has two alternative forms for a character, each of which produce different effect in an organism. These alternative forms are called alleles. Example, in case of pea plant, the stem height is controlled by two alleles, one for tallness and other for dwarfness. Of the two alleles of genes, one is dominant, superruling, and other is recessive, means subordinate or submissive. A dominant allele is the allele which hides or masks the expression of its corresponding allele, which in turn becomes recessive. A contrasting pair of alleles constitutes an allomorph. The genetic constitution of an organism is called genotype. It is description of the gene present in an organism. The genotype of tall plant could be capital T or capital T small t, while that of a dwarfness plant is small t. Phenotype refers to observable characteristics or the express shown character of an organism. For example, tall and dwarf are the phenotype of a plant because their traits are visible to us. When two parents are crossed to reproduce progeny, their progeny is called first filial generation or F1 generation. When the first generation progeny or F1 progeny is crossed among themselves to produce a second generation progeny, this progeny is called second filial generation or F2 generation. A new, for, a new form of plant resulting from a cross of different variants of plant is known as hybrid. Now, type of variation, somatic variation, it takes place in the body cell. It is neither inherited nor transmitted. It is also known as acquired traits. Examples, cutting of tails in dog, boring of pinna, etc. Gametic variation take place in gametes, reproductive cells, inherited as well as transmitted, also known as inherited traits. Example, human height, skin color. Rules for inheritance of traits, models work. Georg John Mendel, known as father of genetics, was an Austrian monk who worked on the pea plant to understand the concept of heredity. His work laid the foundation of modern genetics. He made three basic laws of inheritance: law of dominance, law of segregation, and the law of independent assortment. Here, dominant traits are there are two types of traits: dominant trait and recessive trait. Shape of the seeds round or wrinkled, color of seeds yellow or green, color of pods green or yellow, color shape of pods full or flat constricted, plant height tall or short, position of flowers at leaf junction at the tip of the branch, flower color purple, white. Monohybrid monohybrid inheritance, a cross which involves only a single pair of contrasting characters is called monohybrid cross. Example, a cross between a pea plant capital T and a dwarf plant pea plant small t and small t. Observation of monohybrid cross, all F1 progeny were tall, no medium height plant, halfway characteristic. F2 progeny 1 by 4th were short, 3 by 4th were tall. Phenotypic phenotypic ratio F2 is equals F2 is 3 ratio 1, 3 tall or 1 short plant. Phenotypic ratio 3 ratio 1. Genotypic ratio 1 is to 2 is to 1. The result of the monohybrid cross enabled Mendel to formulate these first law of inheritance, which is known as law of segregation. It states that the characteristics of traits of an organism are determined by internal factors which occur in pairs. Only one of the pair of such factor can be represented in a single gamete. D-hybrid inheritance, a cross which involve plant with two pair of contrasting character, is called D-hybrid cross. Example: a cross of pea plant having round and yellow seeds and a plant with wrinkled and green seed. Observation: when capital R small y was crossed with small r capital Y in F1 generation, all were capital R, capital Y, small y, round and yellow seeds. Self pollination of F1 plant gave parental phenotype and two mixtures seeds plant in the ratio 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. Phonotypic ratio 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. Genotypic ratio 1 is to 4 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1. Ratio 2 is to 2 is to 2 is to 2. The result of the D-hybrid cross enabled Mendel to formulate his second law of inheritance, which is called the law of independent assortment. It states that in the inheritance of more than one pair of traits in a cross, simultaneously the factors responsible for each pair of traits are distributed independently to the gametes. DNA deoxyribonucleic acid is a highly complex molecule with a spirally coiled double helical structure which appears like a ladder. How do these traits get expressed? The DNA present in the cell is responsible for making the protein. A section of this DNA that provide information for one protein is termed the gene that specific protein. For that specific protein, the protein that are thus synthesized are essential in many of the biochemical reactions that are responsible for the expression of a trait, and they are controlled by specific enzymes. Any alteration in them will lead to variation in that trait, and hence genes control the traits in such a way if the traits are to be inherited independently from both the parent, then they need to be present separately. Therefore, each gene set is present as separate independent pieces that are known as chromosomes. With each cell has two sets, one each from both the parent. When these two germ cells combine, they tend to restore the number of chromosomes and hence the DNA. Hence, there are two genes for the expression of every trait. Sex determination. The phenomena or the process which determine whether a developing embryo will be a male or female is known as sex determination. In most organisms, environmental and genetic or chromosomal mechanisms are mainly responsible for the determination of sex of an individual. Humans have 22 pair of autosomes and one pair of sex chromosomes. Females have similar sex chromosome XX, whereas male have a dissimilar pair X and Y. All eggs carry the X chromosome, while sperms may either carry an X or a Y chromosome. The sex of a child depends on whether the egg fuses with a sperm carrying an X chromosome resulting in female or with a sperm carrying Y chromosome resulting in male. Evolution. Evolution can be defined as the formation of more complex organisms from pre-existing simpler organisms over a certain period. It is a slow but progressive natural sequential development or transformation of plants, animal and plants from ancestors of different forms and function. Variation and heredity are two basic factors of evolution. The selection of variants by environmental factors form the basis of evolutionary processes. Illustration situation 1. Group of red and green beetles. Color variation arises during reproduction. All beetles red except one that is green. Crows feed on red beetles. Number of beetles reduce. One beetle green. Progeny beetles green. Crows could not feed on green beetles as they got hide in green bushes. Number of green beetles increase. Conclusion: green beetles got the survival advantage for they are naturally selected as they were not visible in green bushes. These natural selection is exerted by crows resulting in adaptation in the beetles to fit better in the environment. Situation 2: Group of red and blue beetles. Reproduction in group of red beetles. All beetles are red except one that is blue. Number of red beetles increase as they reproduce. One blue beetle reproduce and number of blue beetle also increase. Crows can see both blue and red beetles and can eat them. Number reduced but still red beetles are more and blue one are few. Suddenly elephant come and stamps on the bushes. Now beetles left are mostly blue. Conclusion: blue beetle did not get survival advantage. Elephant suddenly caused major havoc in beetles population, otherwise their number would have been considerably large. From these, we can conclude that accidents can change the frequency of some genes even if they do not get survival advantage. This is called genetic drift and it leads to variation. Situation 3: Group of red beetles and bushes. Group of red beetles. Habitat of beetles suffer from plant disease. Average weight of beetle decreased due to poor nourishment. Number of beetle kept on reducing. Later, plant disease get eliminated. Number of average weight of beetles increase again. Conclusion: no genetic change has occurred in the population of beetles. The population get affected for a short duration only due to environmental changes. Evidence for evolution: a large amount of information has been collected over the last 200 years to support the theory of organic evolution. Such supporting information which help us in accepting the theory is called evidence. Morphological evidence. Morphological evidence of evolution reflect in the form of external features or the appearance of an organism. Anatomical evidence of evolution is usually reflected in the form of structures which appear quite similar in their organization. The similarities found in different group of organisms indicate that these organisms must have a common ancestor. Different organisms have organs which perform a similar function. These organs which have similar function but are different in structure and origin are called analogous organs. For example, tail fin of a lobster and flukes of a whale, wings of a fly and the wings of a bird, eyes of arthropods and eyes of vertebrates are all analogous organs. There are some organs which are fundamentally similar in structure and origin but modified to perform different functions in different organisms. They are called homologous organs. For example, forelimbs of a man are adapted for handling, while forelimbs of bat and birds are adapting for flying, while those of whales and seals are adapted for swimming. Vestigial organs, organs which are found in reduced or rudimentary condition and do not perform any function in the possessor are called vestigial organ or non-functional organ. For example, ear muscles, wisdom tooth, etc. Study of fossils. Fossils are the preserved remain or traces of animals, plants and other organisms from the remote past. The study of fossil is called paleontology, which provide direct evidence in the favor of organic evolution. It helps us to compare the past with the present or as to establish the changes which have occurred in the course of evolution. Embryological evidence. The study of development of an organism from the embryonic stage is called embryology. The comparison of embryos states that in the course of development from the embryo to their adult form, animals go through stages which resemble or represent successive stages in the evolution of their remote ancestors. Now, difference between inherited and acquired traits. Inherited traits are those traits in which characteristics inherited from the previous generation occur due to change in gene or DNA passed on from one generation to another. Examples: red curly hair, brown eyes. acquired traits, characteristics which develop in response to the environment and cannot be inherited. No change in genes or DNA is involved, cannot pass on from one generation to another. Example, cycling and swimming. Darwin's theory of evolution. According to Darwin's theory of natural selection, organisms produce more offspring than they need for their existence. They compete among themselves and fight with the environmental factors for their various needs in life. In the struggle of existence, those with favorable variation continue to exist and those with unfavorable variation die out. Thus, a new species is formed by natural selection. A species is a population of an organism consisting of similar individuals which can be breed together and produce fertile offspring. The process by which a new species develops from the existing species is known as speciation. Important factors which contribute to speciation: geographical isolation leads to reproductive isolation, due to which there is no flow of genes between separate group of population. Drift genetic drift with change in the gene flow imposed by the isolation mechanism act as an agent of speciation. Natural selection, genetic variation within a population of organisms may cause some individuals to survive and reproduce more successfully than others. Evolution and classification. The principle of classification helps us trace the evolutionary relationship of the species around us. In 1859, Charles Darwin first described this concept of evolution in his book, The Origin of Species. Certain group of organisms have ancient body design and are referred as primitive or lower organisms. Some organisms have acquired their body design relatively recently and are called advanced or higher organisms. Tracing evolutionary relationship. In the evolutionary relationship, the occurrence of common characteristics are basis on the classifying them into groups. These common characteristics can be identified as being of two types, namely homologous characteristics. These are those characteristics that are present in different organisms but look similar and they have a common ancestor. They may have the simple basic organ structure but with a different function in various organisms. Example, mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians have four limbs but each serve a different purpose and are modified to perform the function. Analogous characteristics. These are those characteristics that have the similar function in the different organism and they have evolved independently for different ancestors. Example, the wings of a bat and of bird look similar as they serve to perform the same function of flying, but the wings of a bat are actually a fold of skin between the fingers. Hence, these different type of characteristics help in tracing the evolutionary relationship between species to a great extent. Fossils. To study the evolutionary relationship, the current species as well as species that are no longer in existence also need to be considered. The body of the organism usually decomposes when it dies, but due to some environmental condition like hot, mud, or lava, their body may be buried in them, harden, and eventually leave an impression of the body parts. These preserved traits of the living organism that existed in past geological period are termed as fossils. The fossil help in determining the various evolutionary stages of species. The process of conversion of one organism into fossil is termed as fossilization, and its study is referred as paleontology. There are two ways to determine the age or dating of the fossils. Relative dating. These methods involve the digging of the earth and excavating the fossils from the rock. The more recent ones are found closer to the earth's surface. Radiometric dating. In this method, the fossils can be dated based on the radioactive element present in the rocks and detecting the ratios of different isotopes of the same element in the material of the fossil. Evolution by stages. The great variety of organisms existing on the earth is due to changes which have occurred gradually in stages and have resulted in the evolution of the new species. The occurrence of different stages of evolution in a species is not because of the single DNA change. Evolution of eyes. Primitive organisms which existed on the earth were slow moving and small in size. They did not require a specialized organ for observing any object. And evolution progressed. Comparatively larger and mobile organism evolved Most of them were predators and required better vision for predation. Hence, from the basic design of eyes, more complex forms evolved. Evolution of feathers. Birds make use of their feathers for flying. However, feathers did not evolve for flight. They evolved as means of providing insulation to the body in cold weathers. Evolution by artificial selection. Artificial selection is the process in which human preferences have a significant effect on the evolution of the particular species. Humans cultivate wild cabbage as a source of food and have produced different variety of it by artificial selection. Common vegetables such as cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, ex- uh, kohlrabi are descendants of the wild cabbage. Artificial selection has helped in creating diversity in plants and animals. Evolution should not be equated with progress. Evolution has resulted in the generation of a new variety of species. It resulted in the production of diverse life forms subject to environmental selection. The only progress which has occurred due to evolution is the emergence of more complex body design of the organism. When we consider the evolutionary history of man, we often say that the human being evolved from chimpanzees. However, this is not the case. In fact, both chimpanzees and the human being have a common ancestor a long time ago. The two offspring of that common ancestor evolved differently to form the modern day chimpanzees and human beings. Human evolution has been studied using various tools of tracing evolutionary relationships such as excavating, carbon dating, studying fossils, and determining DNA sequence. Research revealed that early members of Homo sapiens came from Africa about 100 years ago. Some of our ancestors left Africa, while others stayed back. So, irrespective of where we live, all human species are natives of Africa. The earliest fossil of human being include the genus Australopithecus, followed by Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, and finally modern day man Homo sapiens.